Konrad Curze, also known as Night Haunter, was one of the 20 Primarchs created by the Emperor. Raised on the hellish world of Nostramo and plagued by prophetic visions of death, Curze became known as one of the most brutal and unstable Primarchs, a creature of terror and darkness that set him apart from many of his brothers. Ultimately, he betrayed the Emperor and joined with Warmaster Horus in the Horus Heresy, although his decision to do so was mired with a fatalistic philosophy more so than any loyalty to the Chaos Gods. The child who would come to be known as Konrad Curze was first recorded as crashing through the surface and into the core of the night-shrouded world of Nostramo. The crust of Nostramo bore high quantities of the mineral adamantium, which provided the basis of the planet's immense mining and purifying industries. The vast majority of the planet's population lived in abject poverty, toiling in the mines, while the rich grew in affluence, exploiting the already downtrodden workers. Crime ran mostly unchecked, depression was inescapable, and overpopulation was kept in check more by suicide than by any other measure. Unlike many of the other Primarchs, Konrad Curze was not taken in by any family and was left to raise himself. He spent his early life surviving off his wits and determination, feeding himself by hunting the feral animals that roamed through the vast city of Nostramo Quintus. During this time, he began to develop visions of the darkest possible future, and these horrifyingly potent waking dreams would curse him throughout his life. During his short youth, Curze was pitched into a destructive cycle of persecution and murder, focusing on the criminal elements of Nostramo's society. His vigilante actions began small, intervening when he witnessed something he believed to be wrong, but rapidly escalating into hunting down those he believed had committed transgressions. At first, several people prominent within the city's corrupt hierarchy disappeared. Leaders of the most vocal opposition to the status quo vanished in similar circumstances. Bodies of known criminals began to appear, gutted like fish by some cruel assailant. Officials were found having been hung from high windows. Body parts blocked stormwater drains. Many of these corpses were so horribly beaten by their assailant that identification was impossible. Within the year, the crime rate of Nostramo Quintus fell to near zero. Society underwent massive changes, most notable of which was the self-imposed curfew that came into being. Though he had yet to be identified, the locals came to refer to him as the Night Haunter. This term quickly came into common usage, describing a dark creature that stalked the city, ready to disembowel anyone it believed to be a criminal or heretic with dirty, razor-sharp talons. Curze saw hope for the inhabitants of his world. He had become the only object of fear and hate within the city. Appearing before the nobles that had survived his vigilante purge, the Night Haunter became the first monarch of Nostramo Quintus. He assimilated knowledge almost greedily and became considered a fair and temperate ruler until word of some injustice reached his ears. He would then hunt the guilty through the streets, wearing them down before killing and mutilating them. The unpredictable pattern of benevolent wisdom and hideous vengeance ushered in a new level of efficiency and honesty in Nostramo's society. Other cities around the planet followed suit in an attempt to keep the Night Haunter from their doors, and a more pleasant civilization was gradually self-administered to Nostramo, thanks to an almost mythological fear of Curze. A short time into the reign of Night Haunter, the Emperor's Great Crusade reached the outskirts of the Nostramo system. The coming of the Emperor of Man was an event that had been prophesied in Nostramo's history, an event that would lead to the planet's downfall. The Emperor, alongside his sons Fulgrim, Ferrus Manus, Rogel Dawn, and Lorgar Aurelian, landed on Nostramo and led a delegation to the center of Nostramo Quintus on foot. The citizens of Nostramo, adapted to the near-constant darkness, could not bear to look upon the radiance of the Emperor. Most wept, as the healing light he projected reflected off the rain-slicked streets into their faces. Those brave enough to look upon him directly were blinded. At the end of the broad road leading to the Night Haunter's palace, Curze stood, waiting for the delegation to approach. As they did, he succumbed to a vision so potent and horrifying that he tried to claw his own eyes out, but was stopped by the Emperor. Night Haunter then looked at the Emperor and his brothers, and it is said he foresaw the fates of them all as well as his own death. He then looked at his father, who broke the silence with the following dialogue.
Konrad Curze, be at peace, for I have arrived and intend to take you home.
That is not my name, father. I am Night Haunter, and I know full well what you intend for me.
Shortly after, Curze departed with the entourage and joined the Great Crusade. Curze was eventually placed in command of his Space Marine Legion, which he renamed the Night Lords. When Curze first took command of his legion, he was vicious and horrifying to behold, but nonetheless was a regal leader with a clear sense of justice. The Night Haunter quickly adapted to the teachings of the Imperium, studying the complex doctrines of the Adeptus Astartes under Fulgrim's tutelage. During this time, Curze had visions of the Horus Heresy and Fulgrim's fall, telling him of their dark future. Although he and his legion excelled in many theaters of war, a tendency soon became apparent. It never occurred to the Night Lords to use anything other than total and decisive force to achieve their goals. Over the first few years, the Night Lords were molded by their Primarch into an efficient, humorless force, possessing the fanatical thoroughness of witch hunters. Curze encouraged his legion to decorate their armor with images designed to inspire fear in the enemy, a tactic that proved incredibly effective. Soon, rumors of the impending presence of the Night Lords would cause a system to pay all outstanding tithes, cease all illegal activities, and put to death any mutants and suspected heretics. Reinforcements to replace the Night Lords that fell in battle were selected from the population of Nostramo. But in Night Haunter's absence, the population of the planet collapsed back into the corrupt and decadent ways that had prevailed before his arrival. Originally, Curze had intended to only have the best and brightest of Nostramo serve within the Legion, but in a ploy to avoid the imperial tithe, the noble families of the world emptied its jails and sent him murderers and thieves. By the time Curze had realized what was happening, he already viewed the Night Lords as a corrupted legion. Curze began to lose some of the control he held over his legion, as the visions that plagued him increased in both lucidity and quantity. Thanks to this, Curze was unique among the Primarchs in that he hated his own legionaries, viewing them as the very criminals he sought out to destroy. Curze's relations with his brothers were equally strained. The Night Lord's brutal tactics caused controversy among other Primarchs, most notably Rogel Dawn and Vulcan. However, while he was widely reviled, Curze privately stated that he didn't hate any of his brothers save Corvus Corax, Primarch of the Raven Guard. The two were extremely similar in their appearance, tactics, and upbringing, but unlike him, Corax had retained his humanity and dignity despite his hellish upbringing. Curze himself did not know if he hated Corax out of self-loathing or the fact that he saw the Raven Lord as still holding on to naive ideals despite his upbringing. For his part, Corax stated that he hated nothing about Curze save his methods of waging war. Night Haunter's relations with Vulcan were even more strained, with the Primarch nearly fighting Curze over the fate of Karatan. On this world, the humans had devolved into worshipping a psychic coven of Eldar witch lords, and Curze carried out a brutal extermination of a major civilian center to open the conflict. Although effective in convincing their enemies to surrender, Vulcan was horrified at the brutality his brother levied against the common people, and the campaign would haunt him for years to come. As the crusade waged on, Curze suffered a particularly violent vision, even by his standards, where he saw a future monstrosity he was destined to become. Curze was horrified by his future, and when snapped out of his trance, he realized he had murdered one of his archivists. This was the first known person Curze killed whom he considered innocent, and it was at this moment that Curze realized he himself now deserved punishment. Later, in a campaign with the Imperial Fists and Emperor's Children in the Chiralt system, he learned of the renewed crime and anarchy on his homeworld. Falling into anguish, the Night Haunter tried to confide in his brother Primarchs Fulgrim and Rogel Dawn, but realized that he had never been close to them since the beginning, as their reaction was less than favorable to his claims. When Fulgrim revealed Curze had told him of disturbing visions of civil war, Dawn confronted the Night Haunter on the matter. Finally snapping from Fulgrim's betrayal of confidence, Curze attacked and wounded Dawn and massacred several Imperial Fists that were guarding him before taking the Night Lord's fleet to Nostramo. A few Imperial pursuit craft arrived just in time to see the Night Lord's laser batteries firing into the hole left by Night Haunter's arrival decades earlier. Thanks to the barrage, Nostramo's core overheated and the world exploded. After this, Night Haunter's terrible acts caused him to become susceptible to the whispers of chaos. The campaigns of the Night Lords became less justifiable, terror campaigns leaving a trail of devastated worlds across the galaxy. Curze no longer crusaded in the Emperor's name, instead fighting only in the name of death and fear. Eventually, the Emperor was forced to order the recall of Night Haunter to answer charges laid against him and his men. But before the Night Lords reached Terra, a new crisis erupted. When word of Horus's betrayal reached Night Haunter, he was quick to swear his legion to the forces of the Warmaster. Curze revealed his treachery during the drop site massacre, launching his legion against the loyalist forces of the Raven Guard, Salamanders, and Iron Hands. During the battle, Curze and Lorgar personally battled against Corax, although he was able to beat them back long enough to retreat. After the massacre, Curze captured Vulcan, but found that the Perpetual Primarch could not be killed despite his best efforts. After unleashing every torment imaginable on Vulcan, the Salamander's Primarch was eventually able to escape Curze's clutches. 2 years after the drop site massacre, Curze engaged the Dark Angel's Primarch, Lionel Johnson, in a series of hit-and-run battles all over the Thramas sector. This continued until randomly hostilities were ceased, and Night Haunter sent out a message to the Lion, telling him he had an important message for him on the planet Sagwalsa. The Lion arrived expecting a trap, but Curze peacefully met with him to deliver his message, the contents of which are unknown to anyone save the two Primarchs. Nonetheless, shortly after this conversation ended, a fight broke out between the two Primarchs and their respective troops. Curze then slashed the Lion's throat, and the Dark Angel Corswain stabbed the Night Haunter in the back. Both legions quickly retreated. The next encounter between the two brothers would begin when the Dark Angels ambushed the Night Lords, and would end with the Lion dealing Curze 11 identifiable wounds that would each have been instantly fatal to a normal Astartes. These injuries would put Curze in a comatose state. While recovering, Curze's senior advisor, First Captain Jago Sevatar, took temporary command of the Legion and divided it into 6 fleets that were to go wherever their respective commander directed them. During this reorganization, the Dark Angels struck again. During this second attack, Curze awoke and boarded the Invincible Reason. He would remain in hiding aboard the Dark Angels' flagship for the next 16 weeks. Curze was able to evade capture on the massive ship, massacring every search team and confounding the Lion himself. When the Dark Angel ship arrived over Macragge, Curze made his escape and landed on the planet by hacking into the Invincible Reason and initiating a mass drop pod landing, commandeering one of the vessels. Curze then unleashed havoc upon Macragge's capital, massacring all he came across and eluding any capture. After killing the Ultramarine Master, Freitas Augustin, in a chapel within the fortress of Hera, Curze was confronted by Roboute Guilliman himself, alongside Lionel Johnson. Managing to hold out against both Primarchs simultaneously, Curze unveiled his trap and detonated the explosives he had rigged around the chapel. Curze escaped in the chaos, while Guilliman and the Lion only survived thanks to the loyalist Iron Warriors Marine Barabbas d'Antioch, who teleported them to Sotha with the Pharaohs. Thinking both Primarchs dead, Curze swept aside a pack of space wolves and was about to kill Guilliman's adopted mother, Tarasha Uten, when he was beset upon by the now insane Vulcan, who had teleported to Macragge. Curze, in genuine shock due to not having any prior visions of Vulcan's arrival, battled the Salamander's Primarch across the planet's surface. The duel was only interrupted by the Cabal assassin, John Grammaticus, who stabbed and apparently killed Vulcan with the Fulgurite, a powerful weapon said to be capable of killing a perpetual. Curze wished the Fulgurite for himself, and as he attacked Grammaticus, the Cabal member's comrade Daemon Prytanis used a captured demon to banish the Primarch into the warp. After being trapped inside the warp for what seemed to him to be weeks, Curze managed to escape and re-emerged into the Materium in front of Macragge's capital. Haunted by visions of Sanguinius's death aboard the Vengeful Spirit, Curze infiltrated the Emperor's throne room on Macragge. At the time, the isolated Primarchs south of the Ruin Storm believed that the Emperor had likely died and had declared an Imperium Secundus seated on Ultramar as a contingency. Breaking into the new Emperor's throne room, Curze wounded the Blood Angel Azkaelon and took him as a hostage. Curze then revealed to him that he not only foresaw the death of Sanguinius, but his own as well, and had come to believe that the scattering of the Primarchs, his own life on Nostramo, the Horus Heresy, and his envisioned death by the Officio Assassinorum were all part of a grand scheme by the Emperor. As his brother arrived to save his son, the Night Haunter wished to know why Sanguinius chose to be a slave to the Emperor, and why he had not accepted the offer of demons on Cygnus Prime to become their champion. When Sanguinius expressed his continued faith in their father, Curze gave the angel a chance to strike him down, an offer Sanguinius refused, and instead pleaded to the Night Haunter that there was still a final chance to join the Loyalists and seek redemption. Stating that Horus's rebellion was nothing in the grand scheme of things, the galaxy was doomed to eternal war, and only chaos existed in the end, Curze set off an explosive trap and escaped from the throne room. Curze continued to plague Macragge, spreading terror and working with anti-Guilliman bandits on the world, and was even able to send a suicide bomber to destroy a strategically important bridge on the Imperium Secundus's capital. However, Lionel Johnson, now Lord Protector of Imperium Secundus, was able to corner the Night Haunter in the Alma Mons region of Macragge. After a vicious battle, Curze was defeated by the Lion. However, the Lion could not bring himself to slay his demented brother, and instead broke his back over his knee. Curze was brought into custody and put on trial before the appointed Emperor of Imperium Secundus, Sanguinius. During the trial, Curze admitted to his actions, but refused to accept guilt because he was made to act that way. Thus, they were not crimes. Curze then divided Guilliman from the Lion, accusing the Lion of ordering secret orbital attacks and pitting them against each other. The Lion sought to kill Curze, but Sanguinius prevented him with words, and Guilliman broke his sword. Later, Guilliman and Sanguinius stood before Curze in judgment to execute him. Guilliman argued that he should be the executioner, and Curze declared that this was just like the Emperor. However, before Guilliman could strike him down, Sanguinius used his psychic powers to attack Curze, as the Night Haunter cried that this was not how he was to die. Suddenly, the lion appeared, asking for Sanguinius to stop. Troops came into the room, demanding the lion's surrender, but he responded that Curze was able to see the future, and that he believed Curze's claim that his death would be at the hands of an assassin was sent by the Emperor. This to the lion was proof that the Emperor was still alive. Sanguinius then recognized that his own visions of death would also be true. Guilliman demanded to know what would come of Curze, and the lion knelt before his brothers and promised that he would personally be Curze's jailer, as Konrad laughed at the confusion of the scene. Curze remained a chained captive aboard the Invincible Reason, with the lion occasionally visiting him to try and use his prophetic visions and insight into helping their effort. However, the Night Haunter, having since regenerated from his spinal injury, rarely proved cooperative and continued to taunt the lion. Curze, aboard the Invincible Reason, was part of the combined fleet of Guilliman, the lion, and Sanguinius as they tried to breach the ruin storm on the heretics' flank and reach Terra to reinforce its defenders. Upon having a vision that his destiny lay at Davin, Sanguinius went aboard the Invincible Reason and took the chained Curze with him, hoping to not only use his prophetic insight into what he must do, but also try and show the Night Haunter that destiny could be changed. Sanguinius was forced to defeat several Dark Angel's guards through non-lethal force, enraging the lion and almost causing him to destroy Davin with cyclonic torpedoes. However, the lion and Guilliman both eventually followed Sanguinius and Curze to the surface, and together, the four Primarchs journeyed to the temple on Davin, where Horus had fallen to chaos many years prior. At the temple, Curze fell into anger and depression as he realized he had foreseen none of this, and that his view that destiny was set in stone was being tested. When Sanguinius was swallowed up by the demon Mad Isle's portal, Curze broke down and seemed genuinely concerned for the Primarch. Guilliman and the lion attempted to get Curze to predict a way to save their brother, but the Night Haunter, in his despair, declared he had no idea what to do, as he had foreseen none of this. As demons erupted across Davin, Curze was dragged back aboard the Invincible Reason. Following the battle, a way to Terra was clear, but blockaded by the fleets of Horus. Guilliman and the lion agreed to distract the blockade, while Sanguinius and the Blood Angels raced to Terra, as was their destiny. Sanguinius took custody of Curze and brought him aboard the Red Tier, declaring that he would face the Emperor's judgment. However, once aboard the vessel, Sanguinius put Curze in a stasis coffin and said that just as he was about to meet his destiny on Terra, so must Curze follow his foreseen path. Sanguinius declared that he would freeze Curze in the stasis coffin and jettison him into space. Though it may take millennia for the Imperial assassin Curze had foreseen killing him to find the Night Haunter, one day fate would catch up. The raging Night Haunter was then frozen in the coffin and shot into the void of space. The three loyalists would sally forth to fight and ultimately defeat Horus's forces at the steep cost of the Emperor. Sanguinius himself would meet his fate on board the Vengeful Spirit, being brutally cut down by Horus before his duel with the Emperor. As the heretical leadership was broken, their forces splintered and scattered. Meanwhile, Curze was entombed in his stasis capsule and aimlessly floated through the void of space for the rest of the heresy, before eventually being discovered by the human salvage ship Sheldrun several years after it had ended, in approximately 32 of M31. A hidden Imperial assassin of the vessel broke the surface of the capsule, awakening Curze, who proceeded to massacre all on board. In the end, only Curze, a crewman known as Elva, and a Kalidas temple acolyte named Gun remained. Gun was able to alert his temple to Curze's general location in the galaxy before meeting his end, while Elva was taken by Curze as a slave to navigate the Sheldrum. As the vessel lacked a warp drive, the trip to Curze's intended destination, Sagualsa, would take 4 years. During that time, Curze tormented Elva, while also growing close to him, instructing the slave in his philosophies. After years of travel, the duo arrived at Sagualsa and rendezvoused with a Night Lord's force under Talos Valcoran. However, Elva saw a glimpse into Curze's mind, coming to the realization that the Night Haunter had doubts regarding his visions and beliefs. To keep the secret safe, Curze had the Night Lords dispose of the slave. On Sagualsa, Curze was able to rejoin his legion. After the invasion of Terra, the Night Lords did not splinter and flee like the rest of the traitor legions. Instead, they continued to attack the Imperium. However, their tactics seemed to change, betraying a self-destructive desperation. The Night Haunter himself had gradually lost the sanity and sense of purpose that had earned the respect of his legion, and in his last days would frequently erupt into fits of violence, incoherency, and sadism. Many, such as Sevatar, had become disheartened at what their Primarch had become since the days of the Thramas Crusade. When word of the returned Night Haunter reached Terra, it is said that the Emperor himself, wishing to destroy the Night Lords forever, dispatched half the Kalidas Temple of Assassins to exterminate the renegade Primarch. Konrad Curze was eventually killed, assassinated by the Kalidas Meshen. He fully knew when he would be slain, down to the anointed hour. And in the time before his death, he conversed with a corpse statue that he addressed as the Emperor. Surprisingly, he heard the voice of the corpse speak back to him, and the Emperor apparently assured Curze that his insanity was never his fault, and he had acted as intended until chaos interfered. Curze broke down when the Emperor questioned his belief that fate was predetermined, stating that he himself had chosen this path. He tore the corpse puppet to pieces, and it is unclear if it was actually the Emperor speaking or a mere hallucination. Thereafter, he completed his memoirs, known as The Dark, hiding the book away within his fortress. Later that night, the assassin Meshen was allowed to infiltrate his palace on Sagualsa, as she encountered no guards between herself and his throne room. Confronted with her, he simply said,
Your presence does not surprise me, assassin. I have known of you ever since your craft entered the eastern fringes. Why did I not have you killed? Because your mission and the act you are about to commit proves the truth of all I have ever said or done. I merely punished those who had wronged, just as your false emperor now seeks to punish me. Death is nothing compared to vindication.
The recovered Imperial vidlog then shows Meshen leaping forward, although the kill was never confirmed, as the video feed cuts out right before they fight. It is believed that Night Haunter allowed himself to be killed, as he saw himself a murderous and corrupt villain, the very thing he sought to destroy. Regardless, his final words are considered one of the great enigmas to the Imperium's history. Thank you for listening to this entry from the Warhammer 40,000 Lexicanum.